Okay, now notice we have our sine functions set up. We have sine. Remember, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. What we're trying to figure out is which angle is A, angle 1 or angle 2. So if we find the 8 and we go over across, because that's opposite, the hypotenuse is 7, so angle A would be angle 1. Let's check and make sure if angle A is still number 1. 15. 15 is adjacent to angle 1, so yes. And this would be opposite, which is 8, and adjacent. So angle 1 is angle A. Now, in the past, we've solved stuff like cosine of 60 degrees. What is cosine of 60 degrees? So in our calculator, we pressed cosine 60 degrees, and that gave us 1/2. Okay? So today what we're going to do is we're going to say cosine of theta, or an unknown, is 1/2. And what we want to do is be able to find theta. So in order to do that, we have to undo cosine. Just like when you add, you undo and you subtract. When you multiply, you undo and divide. So if you look at the calculator, and you can't see it very well on this picture, but all of the undo buttons are on top. So if I want to undo sine, or undo cosine, or undo tangent, I have to press the shift button. So in order to answer this question here, to find theta, I would have to say shift cosine 1/2. And the answer should give me 60. Try it on your calculator. Press shift cosine 60. Close your parentheses. Shift cosine 1/2. And that would give you 60. So that's what we're going to use, because today we're going to be looking for the angle measures. So if I wanted to find the value of angle A, now angle A in every case was angle 1. So no matter what we do, we should get the same answer. So let's see what we get the value for angle A. Here I need to undo the sign, so I'm going to press shift, sign, hit the fraction bar, 8 over 17. Hit your over button, close your parentheses, press equals, and you should get roughly 28. We're going to round. Now let's make sure we get the same thing with cosine. If we want to find an angle here, we want to undo the cosine. So to undo it, I've got to press shift cosine 15 over 17. Don't forget to hit your over button and close your parentheses. And again, you're going to get approximately 28. We're going to round to the nearest whole number. And to make sure we're right, tangent A, if we want to undo the tangent to find A, we got to press shift, tangent, 8 divided by 15. Close your parentheses. And again, we get 28. Remember, if it's the same angle, you should not get a different angle measurement when you're measuring the same angle, no matter which function you use. So let's check here. Now, which angle is angle A? If I look at cosine, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. What is 8 adjacent to? Is 8 adjacent to angle 1, or is 8 adjacent to angle 2? Same thing here. If I want to find sine, I'm trying to figure out which angle is A. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So if I look here, what is 15 opposite from? 15 is opposite from angle 2. And here 15 is opposite angle 2, and it's adjacent to angle 2. 8's adjacent to angle 2. So these. Now, we know that our acute angles have to be complementary. And remember, what does complementary mean? If angle 1 was 28, we could use the fact that complementary angles, the acute angles, are complementary. So I could say that angle 1 and angle 2 add to give me 90. So I need to figure out what plus 28 equals 90. So if I subtracted 28 from both sides, that's going to tell me that angle 2, or angle A, needs to equal 62. I can check it with my calculator. If I want to do cosine to find angle A, I'm going to hit Shift, cosine, in order to get it to undo cosine, and press 8 over 15, or 17. And the calculator says 61.92, which rounds to be 62. Same thing if I want to undo the sine function to find angle A, I would press Shift, sine, 15 over 17. And again, it equals 61.9, which is 62. Follow the same system here. If I want to find A, I'm going to undo tangent. So Shift, tangent, 15 over 8. And again, that gives me 62. So no matter whether I subtracted it from its complement and got 62, or did the inverse or the opposite of each one of these trig functions, I always got 62. Notice, here I know two sides. I want to find theta, which is an angle measure. Alright? So I'm going to use my trig functions. S stands for sine. You find that by opposite over hypotenuse. C stands for cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. And T stands for tangent, opposite over adjacent. Now I can tell from here that across the triangle would be my opposite side, so 4 would be opposite. 13 is not the hypotenuse, so it would be adjacent. So which trig function would I need to use? I would have to use tangent because that's the one that uses opposite and adjacent. So I'm going to say tangent theta, I don't know the value of the angle, equals the opposite value, which is 4, over the adjacent value, which is 13. Now since I'm looking for the angle theta, I've got to undo tangent. And how do I undo a trig function? I press Shift, tangent, fraction bar, 4 over 13, over, close my parentheses, and it tells me that theta is approximately 17 degrees. The only difference in these and the ones we've been doing is that we have to press Shift because we're looking for the angle. Here's another example. I want to find theta. That's my unknown here. So I look here, I can tell that 13 is across from my hypotenuse, or from the right angle, so it has to be the hypotenuse. And 12 is touching, so it is the adjacent. So I have to figure out which trig function, sine, cosine, or tangent, that I need to use. Well, look, I know I need one that has adjacent and hypotenuse. So the trig function that uses adjacent and hypotenuse would be cosine. So I'm going to say cosine of theta, because I do not know the angle, equals the adjacent, which is 12, over the hypotenuse, which is 3. Again, if I'm looking for theta, I've got to undo cosine. So I'm going to press Shift, cosine, 12 over 13. And that tells me the angle here. Theta equals approximately, we'll round that up to 23 degrees because the 6 increases the 2. Here's another example. Again, the unknown in this picture is the angle B. That's represented by the letter theta. So across from B is 7.7. That would be my opposite side. Adjacent to B would be 14. I don't know my hypotenuse, nor do I want to. So I've got to decide which one of my trig functions do I need to use. So I know I need to use something with opposite and something with adjacent. That tells me to use tangent. So I'm going to write tangent theta, and I don't know the angle, so I'm going to use the theta symbol, equals opposite 7.7 over 14. In this case, again, since I'm solving for theta, I've got to undo the tangent function, which tells me to press the shift button, then the tangent button, 7.7 over 14. Be sure to close your parentheses. And that tells me theta is 28.8, which is going to round to 29 degrees. Number 16. A diver stands on level ground 50 feet from the base of the 12-foot high dive. What is the approximate measure of angle of elevation between the diver and the diving board? Round to the nearest whole number. Now remember, I want to know what is the angle. That means X is here. So again, I've got to decide. Across is my opposite. Beside is my adjacent. I'm going to use my SOHCAHTOA to remind me which trig function to use. Which trig function uses opposite and adjacent? That would be tangent. So I'm going to write tangent. Now remember, I don't know the angle, so I'm going to have to put X. That's what's represented here. Tangent is opposite, which is 12, over adjacent, which is 50. Since I want to know the angle, X, I've got to undo the tangent function. That tells me to press shift. And then I press 12 over 50. Remember to go over and hit the parentheses button. So that tells me that X is 13.49, which would not round up to 15. So my answer would be 13.